According to my colleagues across the aisle, these regulations don't matter, but that doesn't mean they're anti-regulation. Republicans want to regulate access to abortions. Republicans want to regulate access to gender-affirming care. Republicans want to regulate books for school children. None of those issues make us safer. I wish my Republican colleagues were as concerned about Black and brown communities on the front lines of our climate crisis as they are about an appliance. Republicans are consistently against regulations that maintain workplace safety standards, enact gun control to keep our children safe in schools, and allow access to reproductive care. These standards are not a ban on gas stoves, but a way to move the nation forward and reduce health and climate risks to people and our planet while giving consumers more information and more options. Generally, the people that are at the protest, we care. Those folks are showing up because they want to see something done about policing in this community, in this country. They want to stop the fact that every single year we have a rise in police killings and nobody is doing the actual work to fix it. And so by saying, hey, we're going to show up and put our bodies on the line, and then turning that around to make it as though those are the folks who are violent, those are the folks who are extreme. If you stop the police violence in this community, in this country, then nobody has to show up for a protest. Let me just say that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for being here, Secretary Mayorkas. St. Louis and I are here today, as always, to ask hard questions about real issues. Secretary Mayorkas, I'm concerned that the department and the Office of Intelligence and Analysis in particular encourages the targeting of protesters, activists, incarcerated people, and progressive movements. For example, in 2020, under the prior administration, intelligence and analysis labeled individuals protesting police brutality and racial injustice after the killing of George Floyd as domestic violent extremists. And department leadership instructed officials to create and share intelligence dossiers about, quote, everyone participating in Portland protests, unquote, as part of a discredited effort to link protesters to a non-existent terrorism plot. And these issues still continue to this day. Thank you, Chairman. St. Louis and I are here today in defense of strong government regulations that keep the public safe. Republicans claim that regulations slow down the economy and stifle innovation, but it's pure fantasy to expect entire industries to self-regulate without government oversight. Regulations like workplace safety standards enforced by OSHA, environmental protection provisions enforced by the EPA, FDA requirements for food production all keep our communities safer. A world without regulations will look like asbestos in our schools and workplaces, every corporation dumping chemicals into rivers, and unfettered use of child labor, and no safety standards for building construction, for housing, transportation, agriculture, or consumer products. According to my colleagues across the aisle, these regulations don't matter. We have decades of research that proves giant corporations like Walmart, Amazon, Exxon, Microsoft, Monsanto will cut corners to save a few pennies, all while making their chief executives and their shareholders even more rich. If we rely on these industries to self-regulate, we will undoubtedly end up with more public health crises like oil spills and water contamination. And I'm not willing to pay that price. St. Louis, home to Coldwater Creek and home to Westlake Landfill, we are not willing to pay that price. While these examples are extreme, you may say, the premise is not. Federal regulations and modern and effective regulatory process keeps our communities safer. Regulations keep the financial system strong. They strive to keep drug prices low and health care accessible and affordable. They ensure that people trying to get a good education or buy a home for their families are not defrauded by opportunistic and greedy corporations. This proposed rule is not a ban on gas stoves. This proposed rule is not a ban on gas stoves. We are regulating indoor air pollution. The climate crisis is happening all around us, and Republican inaction is costing us lives. As lawmakers, we have a moral obligation to prioritize the health and well-being of every person across our country. I represent a community where the threat of climate pollution comes from both inside and outside our homes. In St. Louis City, Black children are twice as likely to test positive for lead in their blood than white children. St. Louis ranks among the highest across our country for rates of asthma, with rates significantly higher for Black residents than white residents. I can only imagine the number of my constituents who are unknowingly being poisoned by their gas stove in the state that it is without this proposed rule being in effect, especially young children, our elders, and people with disabilities who are disproportionately at risk for contracting respiratory illnesses. Let's not forget that many of these gas stoves are not owned by the residents of those homes, but often absentee or corporate landlords. That is a thing. We have a number of housing regulations in place to ensure that renters are kept safe. This also applies, when we speak about keeping renters safe, to the indoor air pollution, how that should be a top concern. This proposed rule is not a ban on gas stoves. Research proves that improving the energy efficiency of gas stoves and switching to electric stoves completely will save lives, will save money, and will save our environment. The Department of Energy estimates that the updated standards to improve gas stove energy efficiency will save consumers at least $100 million. Provide climate benefits of $67 million, and health benefits of $65 million each year. Congress has an obligation to make smart and forward-thinking investments with taxpayer dollars to ensure our future generations are not plagued by illnesses that lawmakers can prevent today. It's important to recognize that gas stoves perpetuate an unsustainable reliance on fossil fuels and can cause significant health issues. We know the Department of Energy's proposed rule and new efficiency standards will reduce both the negative climate and negative health impacts. The Department of Energy policy would keep our communities safe. So it's no surprise the Republicans are against it. Gas stoves have long been linked to serious health hazards, especially in children who grow up in homes with gas stoves. According to the Scientific American, scientists have long known that gas stoves emit pollutants that irritate human airways and can cause or exacerbate respiratory problems. We have the tools and the technology to address these issues definitively within the timeline DOE set forth. 3 years to allow manufacturers to produce more energy-efficient stoves is being generous.